When the receptionist mockingly denied an elderly woman a room, he had no idea he was humiliating the owner of the hotel. That moment set off a chain of events that changed everything. What happened next will shock even the most seasoned observers. But let's start from the very beginning. Clarissa Jenkins approached the luxurious reception desk of the Monarch Hotel. She was impeccably dressed, a dark navy suit, a gold brooch, and neatly styled hair. On the surface, she appeared to be an ordinary guest, but a gleam of confidence sparkled in her eyes. The young receptionist, Brian, barely glanced up as she arrived. "How can I help you?" he asked indifferently. "I'd like to book a room," Clarissa said. Brian lazily skimmed the screen in front of him. "Sorry, we're fully booked," he said with a slight smirk. Clarissa held up her smartphone, displaying the available rooms on the hotel's website. "It says here that there are rooms available." Brian shook his head dismissively. "Those rooms aren't available, but I could suggest something more affordable at another hotel." At that moment, another guest entered the lobby, a tall white man dressed in a tracksuit. "Welcome, sir," Brian immediately greeted him with a broad smile. "We just so happen to have a luxurious suite available for you." Clarissa watched as the man was quickly handed a key. "Excuse me, but why did you offer him a room and not me?" she asked. Brian looked at her with disdain. "I'm sorry, but our hotel isn't for everyone," he said, sneering as he glanced her up and down. Clarissa stepped aside and took a seat in the lobby. A stream of guests passed by, some silently shaking their heads at what they had just witnessed, while others hurried away. Nearby, two young men sitting on a sofa began recording the scene on their phones. Brian turned to his colleagues and, speaking loudly enough for others to hear, said, "Looks like she thinks this is public housing." His colleagues exchanged nervous glances, but none of them spoke up. Clarissa quietly observed everything, her gaze hardening to steel. This injustice was the spark that ignited changes no one at the hotel could have anticipated. Clarissa continued sitting in the lobby, pretending to scroll through her phone. In reality, she was closely observing everything happening around her. Brian, emboldened by a sense of impunity, openly discussed her with his colleagues. "Can you believe it?" he scoffed. "She really thought she could stay here. The audacity!" The receptionist beside him, Kate, looked uneasy. "Maybe you should have at least checked the system," she suggested cautiously. "Don't waste your time, Kate," Brian snapped. "Guests like that only ruin the hotel's reputation." Unnoticed, Clarissa activated the voice recorder on her phone, capturing every word. Moments later, an older couple, visibly weary from travel, entered the lobby. Clarissa watched as Brian, suddenly adopting a professional and welcoming tone, quickly checked them in. His hypocrisy was on full display. A few minutes later, a middle-aged man in a business suit arrived. He scanned the lobby and headed straight to Brian. It was Jonathan, the hotel's operations manager, responsible for overseeing the staff's daily performance. "Brian," Jonathan began, "we've had complaints about delayed service. What's going on?" Brian, smirking nervously, gestured toward Clarissa. "Just dealing with a situation here, but as you can see, she's not really our target clientele." Jonathan frowned, casting a quick glance at Clarissa, who met his gaze with an impassive expression. "Did you check her request?" Jonathan asked sharply. "Of course," Brian lied smoothly. "Honestly, I'm sure she's just here to waste our time." At that moment, the two young men who had been filming the scene earlier approached the reception desk. One of them, clearly outraged, said, "Hey man, we recorded everything. Your behavior is disgusting." Brian's face turned pale. "You were recording? That's illegal," he shouted. "Legal or not, it's going online," the young man replied coldly. Jonathan shifted his full attention to the unfolding situation. "What is going on here?" he demanded, his tone growing more authoritative. Clarissa rose from her seat, her gaze calm yet piercing. "It seems it's time to clarify who's really wasting whose time," she said, locking eyes with Brian. The tension in the room grew heavier, signaling that the climax of this confrontation was near. A tense silence fell over the lobby. Brian's eyes darted nervously between Clarissa, Jonathan, and the young men with their phones. Anger and panic flashed across his face. "Perhaps it's time for an audit," Clarissa remarked coolly. "Let's see if there are really no available rooms." Jonathan, now fully aware that something was wrong, frowned. "Brian, log into the system and show me the records," he ordered. Sure," Brian stammered, pretending to check the computer. Clarissa crossed her arms, her unyielding gaze sweeping across everyone present. Just then, another staff member, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "Excuse me, sir," the employee said to Jonathan, "but there actually are several rooms available. I just checked the system myself." Jonathan turned to Brian, his expression hardening. "You lied to me?" he demanded. It's a misunderstanding," Brian stuttered. "Maybe I made a mistake." Before he could finish, Clarissa stepped forward. "Allow me to clear up this misunderstanding," she said firmly. "My name is Clarissa Jenkins, and I am the owner of this hotel." Brian turned as pale as a sheet, as if the air had been knocked out of him. The other employees froze in place. "I came here incognito to evaluate the quality of service, and what do I find? Discrimination, arrogance, and outright lies. This is unacceptable." Clarissa's voice was steady, yet commanding. The young men with their phones seized the moment. "This video is going viral within hours," one of them commented. Jonathan, now fully grasping the gravity of the situation, attempted damage control. "Ms. Jenkins, please accept my sincerest apologies. This is all a misunderstanding." "No," Clarissa interrupted firmly. "This is a system that allows such behavior to persist. We'll address this later. For now, I want a list of anyone who might have been affected by similar conduct." She turned to Brian. "You're fired, immediately. Gather your things and leave the premises." Brian was speechless. Barely able to move, he stepped out from behind the desk, his career in ruins. "Now," Clarissa addressed the remaining staff, "we have work to do. This hotel must become a place where everyone is treated with respect, and that starts today." Inspired by her resolve, the staff nodded. A new chapter in the monarch's history had begun. The next day, all the hotel staff gathered in the conference room. Clarissa, dressed in a sharp business suit with a determined expression, took center stage. The atmosphere was tense, yet brimming with anticipation. "I want to thank those who had the courage to speak up," she began, scanning the room. "Because of your efforts, I learned the truth about what's been happening behind the scenes at this hotel." She turned on a projector, and the screen displayed the video footage of Brian's behavior from the day before. Gasps filled the room. "This," Clarissa continued, "is an example of what will never happen here again. In this hotel, every employee and every guest must feel respected." Jonathan stood up. "We've already begun reviewing all complaints about staff behavior. We're also implementing a training program to prevent discrimination." "This is only the beginning," Clarissa added. "We will completely overhaul our standards. If anyone here encounters injustice, you can come directly to me or Jonathan." At that moment, a maintenance worker named Thomas stood up. "Ms. Jenkins," he said, "I've worked here for 15 years. For the first time, I feel like we're being heard." His words drew applause, and the tension in the room began to dissipate. A few weeks later, Clarissa invited local media to showcase the hotel's transformation. A small press conference was held in the lobby. Clarissa spoke about new initiatives, including higher wages, an anonymous complaint hotline, and updated service standards. One of the young men who had recorded the incident approached her after the conference. "Thank you for what you've done, Ms. Jenkins. The video went viral, but your response inspired thousands of people." Clarissa smiled. "This is just the beginning. We must fight for equality every single day." After the event, Clarissa lingered in the lobby for a moment. She gazed at the hotel, now more than just a business to her. It had become a symbol of change. Change sparked by one simple yet powerful act: refusing to accept injustice. Her expression softened. She knew that the monarch was now truly worthy of its proud name.